Okay, so when we're talking about distractions, I mean, this is not supposed to be a public health service, but I'm doing you a disservice not to mention the distraction of the cell phone. Now, I know cell phones and screens have become a common and ordinary, everyday thing, but they have a different impact on babies' brains than they do on adult brains. So, yeah, cell phones are not helping. I mean, we're finding that children have shorter concentration spans because the parents aren't communicating for as long before they turn to the cell phone. Actually, my friend Miriam McCaleb is another New Zealander that's just finished her PhD around how cell phones are impacting on human development, so you might want to look that up online. But basically, to summarise, the World Health Organization and the World Association of the Paediatrics doctors both have on their websites that the appropriate number of minutes per day that an infant can look at a screen without doing any damage at all is 0. Now, a lot of that's to do with their visual development. As they develop vision, they need to be looking at a 3D world and not a 2D world. A lot of it is because what we see as a screen, and a picture on a screen is really lots of pixels of light that your frontal cortex or your brain interprets. So if I'm talking to my mother-in-law in England on Skype, I see a picture of my mother-in-law. When we put the baby in front of the Skype to talk to Nana in England that they've never seen before, the baby's not going to see a picture of Nana. They're going to see whole lots of pixels of light. And those pixels of light are essentially interpreted by the brain as flashing lights. And flashing lights arouse your survival brain. The more your survival brain is aroused, then the less we're really arousing that brain to do with intelligence and all the stuff that we want. There's lots of reasons why screens really don't help with human development. A lot of it's to do with your dopamine release. So dopamine's a reward system that humans have, released by the nucleus accumbens in the brain. Basically, screens release a lot of dopamine. Now that might sound like a good thing, but actually too much dopamine is dangerous. It's dangerous because easy dopamine means that they're not going to want to put in any work to get dopamine. So once you give your child a screen, they get so much dopamine, they're never going to want to build a sandcastle or to play with other toys because they just don't get the same dopamine release. This is why it's associated with addiction later on, because addiction is basically about quick dopamine release. I can go to the gym 3 times a week to get the good sort of effects of dopamine, or I can just drink a bottle of vodka and get lots of dopamine. Obviously, the second one's not as good and has all the other negative ramifications. So it encourages short-term gratification. It also means that when you're looking at screens might entertain the child for some of the reasons we've said already. When the baby stares at the screen, it's not so much because they're entertained, it's because of the flashing lights. But a screen and a television, it basically has predictable outcomes. We're a set of outcomes. Whereas the human brain, creativity, imagination, really has no limitations at all. So we're imposing limitations. The earlier we see screens, not only does it interfere with their vision, but it also tends to interfere with their language development, and it interferes with the development of creativity. And creativity is a huge component of the intelligence as human beings that we're going to develop later. So like I say, it's not a public health warning. I know the reality of life and that I can teach all of that, and then I have my grandchildren for the weekend, and when they finally are allowed a screen, I mean they're 8 and 4, peace just reigns, they're suddenly quiet. So I can see why it's good for parents, and I understand you've got to balance it out with reality. But really, when we're talking about a new baby, the longer that you can delay giving the baby a screen, the better all their outcomes are going to be. In fact, when one of my children asked me when they were having a baby, if you've got to choose one thing, Dad, you have all the stuff that you know, and you got one wish for this baby, and I was just going to comply and do it, what would your one wish or instruction be? So I thought about that quite deeply, and at the end of it, my choice was, what I'd really like for my grandchild is to think that in the first year of life, they don't see a screen. Because I think that out of everything that you can do, that's probably going to have the biggest impact. So what might be a good practice to establish right now at the start of having a baby is to maybe not have that cell phone while baby's awake. Silence it, turn off the notifications because that activates the whole human reward system when you hear that ding. Turn it off, put it on silent, put it on top of the fridge, and only reactivate that phone when baby's asleep. That's a good habit to get into right now when you've got a new baby, because it's going to be a very hard habit to break later on.